right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, September 1st, if you can even believe it, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Friday, everyone. It is 55 degrees and overcast here in upstate New York. And I just looked at the satellite map, and it looks like Harvey is all the way up to Ohio now, so we might actually get to see some of that. So where did we leave off yesterday? We titled the show, I think this was yesterday. No, hold on. Hold the phone. I know, I usually cue these up in the afternoon and the day before, but I don't believe I did. Hold on. Yeah, it was. I guess it was. So wait, I did not do a show yesterday. That's why we titled the show NVIDIA GPUs, Robot Eyes, Nose, Disney, and AI usurping humanity. We've spent the last few days looking at artificial intelligence again and how we are all feeding the machine to build this other entity that is growing in leaps and bounds. We have heard the term exponential growth many, many times. And people like Elon Musk, though, gotta love to hate him. I don't know if I trust Elon Musk, but he's a smart cookie. And Elon Musk, as well as many others, Stephen Hawking and even Billy Gates, have come out to warn against the dangers of AI usurping humanity's intelligence levels and taking all the jobs. So no, don't worry about it, Johnny. Shh, go back to sleep because it'll all be okay. Well, it's not going to be okay, as they are giving machines the ability to have five senses. And we read about robot googly eyes, GPUs, and that scientist, we're going to get back to him, in Nigeria that now has created some sort of biological silicon hybrid that can actually have a sense of smell. They want to use it at airports and be able to detect explosives or chemicals, or they're even going to use it to sniff out cancer. So we'll see how this all works out. But as all this is happening, don't forget, not only do we have robots with senses, but we also have robots that can build themselves, AI that can create AI, and we've read about that before. AI that can create its own language that's then shut down because it's a little too scary. AI that can beat a human on a military strategy game. That's even more concerning. Well, don't worry about that, because CNET says that most Americans believe that AI will help them, says an AI company. Of course they do. This is from yesterday, August 31st, 2017, out of CNET.com. Commentary, a study released by AI software platform Conversica suggests that only 1 in 5 people believe that AI is going to ruin their careers. That's what I mean. Shh, go back to sleep. And the programming has been complete. It really doesn't matter what Elon Musk says. When it comes to artificial intelligence, he's a bit of a hawk, or even a hawking. Yeah, just like I said, and you know what? I didn't even know that was in there. He stokes fears of a robot doomsday and demands we regulate robots now, when in fact real humans are rather looking forward to AI and to the bounteous gifts it will bring. Yes, because of the dangling carrot, the love of convenience, the machine will make all the tough decisions for you. This is how they're selling it. It is that dopamine button, making you anticipate and feel happy. And trust. Remember, DARPA is working on how to manipulate trust in humans. I judge this new piece of research that's landed under my nose, and it declares, for example, that 75% of the 1,017 adults questioned during a June 2017 survey believe that AI is here to help humans. Because that's the elevator pitch. That's how they're selling it to you, but that is not necessarily going to be the case. We read about a story yesterday how AI can be tricked to be evil, and they were calling it I don't remember, darknet or badnet. That's what they were calling them. They could be tricked to be evil. I was also reading again that because humans have created the algorithms that these machines learn upon, that a lot of AI is being deemed racist, which I find hysterically funny, not because it's racist, but because the lefties are probably crying in their beers now over it, because not even an artificial intelligence, something that wouldn't be swayed by emotions, but wait, because they're building emotional robots, we'll look at that later, are going to be able to be perfect like you think that this should be. This is not going to be a happy, what was the TV show with Gil Gerard back in the 70s or the 80s where they had those robots in the white rooms, and Aaron Gray was, I don't know, one of the people on the ship. And it was just this utopian world of the future. It's not going to be like that. A mere 19% agree with the doomsday scenario in which robots put people out of work and out to pasture. Well, I guess we are the minority then, because I'm telling you, after my entire career in technology, and we've seen that there's quite a few other people who have spent their lives from the beginnings of the computer revolution, they're looking at this now going, whoa, we better slow down, because things aren't looking like we had planned originally. This is true. It's like a big net being thrown over us down to the cellular level. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on as this not only is part of the military-industrial complex, but also the medical-industrial complex, and they will make sure to get it into you, me, Nana, and Johnny. I should alert you to the fact that this research was sponsored by Conversica, and it happens to be, an artificial intelligence company that promises to create engaging conversations so that you can reach your sales goals. Engaging conversations with a robot, that is. And what conversations can these be? Well, just look at what men say to Conversica's female-sounding robots. I fear that not everyone will agree with the spirit of these research findings, like Joel. And some experts speak of AI causing a considerable decimation of jobs, not only merely paying ones. We've talked about that. It's going to be the white-collar jobs as well, the surgeons, the lawyers, the oncologists, and it goes on. And still in this touchingly optimistic research, 26% of people said that they looked forward to doing fewer repetitive tasks thanks to AI. 18% of respondents said that they hoped that AI would help them learn tasks faster, and 16% actually believe that AI will make them better and faster decisions. Oh, how many people to fire, perhaps? That would be one decision. If there's one thing technology has shown us in recent times, it's how fast change will come. Indeed, I suspect much of the alleged optimism expressed in this research stems from fear. 40% of respondents said that they have to embrace the AI or miss out on job opportunities, and 35% admit if they didn't embrace AI, they'd be replaced by those who did. Now, that sounds a little more realistic, and that is true. They will be replaced by those who did. So just like we talked about white-collar jobs, artificial intelligence, big data, and invisible patients. This is out of MedCity News, medcitynews.com. If the barrier to precision medicine is data handling, and we read all about the precision medicine initiative through Obama and the 21st Century Cures Act that was passed by Congress in December of 2016. If the barrier to precision medicine is data handling, then artificial intelligence may be the logical solution, because it always is. Machine learning and deep learning are making inroads in a variety of industries and seem poised to have a big impact in medicine, a process that is already in motion and perhaps not a moment too soon. Right. As my foray into the lizard's pit has proven, you could just go meet lots and lots of specialists and get no answers, as every visit is coming out of your pocket. Cha-ching. So how many times have I already wished for a Dr. Watson or a Dr. Smartphone? Dr. Smartphone, that didn't quite help me at all, at least at that juncture. Anyway, the process is already in motion, and perhaps not a moment too soon. Your chance in your lifetime of getting a false diagnosis, if you look at the data, is 100%. How amazing is that? Prem Reaction Solution, says Thomas Wilkins, founder and CEO of Inventus to the audience at the recently concluded Precision Medicine Leadership Summit in San Diego. There is a lot to improve, and this was from August 27th, 2017. Wilkins moderated Going Deep in the Fast Lane, the Rise of AI in Precision Medicine, which combines efforts from the industry and academia to parse this evolving segment. And in some cases, these technologies have already arrived, though admittedly in rare silos. I started my company in where? Oh, Israel, because they had electronic medical health records for more than 15 years, like in Estonia, says Wilkins. These countries use algorithms to manage disease like diabetes, and the patient doesn't even see a doctor until a computer pops out a result which possibly indicates some deterioration. Here we go. This is 21st century medicine. They have algorithms in Estonia from a biobank that are almost spooky in prediction when people will deteriorate. And one of the underlying issues is whether the data is ready for AI. Our tool Butte, who directs the Institute for Computational Health Sciences at UCSF, as well as being the director of the clinical informatics for the entire University of California system, has some insight into these matters. Who happens to work for, yes, Manit Napolitano. He points to genomics and electronic health records as an excellent source. More data is always good, but I'm a believer that we have amazing data right now. And remember, we are feeding a lot of this data right into the machine voluntarily. We actually don't have enough people using the data right now. The real danger is to wait for perfection. Yeah, that means let's just let all the stops out and let it go without any safeguards in place. And that seems to be the modus operandi. That's where the Voltaire question comes in. Perfection is the enemy of good, and we are good right now, he says. This includes data from insurance claims, electronic health records, imaging. Remember, we read about AI being able to read CT and MRI scans, genotyping. We've read about IBM Watson learning genomics, cancer genetics, and Watson is doing oncology right now, as well as clinical research like the Framingham Heart Study. But there is also potential to mine massive amounts of plain vanilla online data to get intriguing results. The real opportunity of all that data is not the patients who are really sick. It is identifying and understanding those who are currently not touching the system. Ding, ding, ding. The resistant consumers, says Nick Vander Tieden, founder and CEO of Incremental Healthcare. And all of the invisible patients that we can identify based on an additional data set. In a recent paper, it used Instagram photos to detect juvenile depression. Another study mined Bing search data to identify people with undetected cancers. Eric Horvitz, senior author, finding was that based on the consumer search patterns, he was able, with a high degree of accuracy, to find people with undiagnosed pancreatic cancer based on their web browsing history, says Simon Koss, chief medical officer at Microsoft. And while the data dragnet can find useful, perhaps life-saving information, they can also produce unwanted insights and privacy concerns. See, that's why after you do a few searches, you start getting little pop-up ads on the side saying, do you have diabetes? As you're searching like sugar intolerance or something. I mean, this stuff is crazy, and there is no anonymity anymore. So why doesn't Microsoft put out a de-identified list of their customer? Asked Butte. Well, you guys sell Windows to people. You guys sell Office to people. Why can't I download that data set? I see tech companies always asking us to share our data, but they never share the data themselves. Ultimately, the sector needs to learn to crawl before it can walk, and we're going to talk about that. AI in healthcare is being test-driven outside of patient care. In finance, for example, we've done a lot of work around using predictive analytics with healthcare providers to advance AI for precision medicine when it moves into clinical practice. He had to determine whether or not you're worth saving, says Andy Bartley, Senior Solutions Architect for Health and Life Sciences at Intel. Predicting is where we are seeing a lot of adoption right now. And yeah, that would be this next story. And I think we covered this the other day. AI is now able to predict when you're going to die. If you are a patient with radiological test scans, this is in oncology, doing some sort of CT scan, doctors aren't the only ones who could tell or estimate how long a patient is going to live. Well, not anymore. That is because AI has become so smart that it can do the same job. Researchers from the University of Adelaide was able to develop a system which was able to predict patient lifespans. And after looking at radiological test scans, the AI system analyzed and found patterns to say which among the 48 sample patients would die within 5 years. It was able to predict death with a 69% accuracy, according to researchers, which is equivalent to that of a trained human oncologist. But now the team behind this technology claims to have an updated version. I thought we read somewhere as 80-some%. Lyle Palmer, professor of genetic epidemiology at the university and one of the researchers, revealed that the inspiration behind the AI system is to now model how human brains learn through deep learning. And all this is using deep learning. And all the fundamental ideas behind deep learning are not new. Dramatic improvements in computing capacity and access to large data sets. Remember, we have so many we don't know what to do with them all, have enabled the widespread use of deep learning approaches in industry and academia over the last 5 years. Its use in medicine is currently at its very early stage. So put on a seatbelt. In other words, radiological images are an untapped source for precision medicine. There is so much potential valuable information in hundreds of thousands of images taken in hospitals for routine clinical purposes, and these could be used for diagnostic and prognostic purposes. Other than predicting the death of patients, after my 41,000 scans, the AI system, which when perfected, could be useful in even forecasting the onset of chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, even before symptoms are evident. Early diagnosis of chronic diseases is one of the holy grails of modern biomedicine, says Palmer. And however, the technology is still so young, and I could tell you already, they were able to do reports of my scans, and at the very end, it said that it was the report was transcribed by Dragon Naturally Speaking. So the doctor who was looking at my scans must have just been sitting there talking, giving observations on all the different things that he sees. But what would it take for an AI to be able to look at those same scans and go, oh, you have a small spleen, which I do apparently. They noted that in one of the reports. But also, dictate out everything that it sees. I mean, this could completely wipe this job off the map for a physician. However, the technology is still so young, doctors cannot do anything with the information that the AI produces to help the patients, since the current models are only capable of predicting 5-year mortality in a subset of patients being imaged in a thoracic CT scan in a hospital setting. Ding, I've been there. It already overflows with potential, though, as present. It predicts death with around 80% accuracy, and this is far better than a human doctor could do. Well, would you want that information is the question. I don't know. If they gave me an 80% prediction that I was going to die in the next 5 years, I think I might do things a little differently. That would be for sure kind of scare the shit out of you. So the next doctor you consult could be a robot. Healthcare meets AI and blockchain, which is interesting. This is out of a publication published on NASDAQ.com, August 25th, 2017. Startup company Doc.ai has been working with university researchers to create a platform on blockchain where patients can discuss their medical data with an artificial intelligence doctor. Oh no, here comes Watson in the ether. On August 24th, Doc.ai announced that their advanced natural language processing technology platform based on blockchain would timestamp data sets, decentralize artificial intelligence, and the startup stated that the platform was, quote, envisioned and built by researchers from Stanford and Cambridge University. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. The objectives of the company is to help healthcare companies improve patient care and experience through an advanced natural dialogue system, which will be able to generate insights from combined medical data. According to WHO, the World Health Organization, there is a shortage of 7 million healthcare professionals globally. Problem, reaction, solution again. And that number is on the rise. I told you that AI was going to be the solution to our healthcare crisis. And there is increasing pressure on doctors. And of course, that's why we have this worldwide timeline now for 5G to be everywhere, including Africa. Furthermore, the training of a healthcare professional takes years of education and experience. And with the help of AI.doc, AI aims to address those challenges while improving the patient care and providing a better healthcare experience. We are making it possible for lab tests to converse directly with patients by leveraging advanced AI, medical data forensics, and decentralized blockchain. And I'm assuming this probably for HIPAA and security purposes. We envision extensive possibilities for the use of this technology by doctors, patients, and medical institutions, says Walter D. Brower, founder and chief executive officer of Doc.ai, in a statement. Deloitte Life Sciences and Healthcare is working with Doc.ai to test the company's Robo hematology solution. Oh my God. I went to go see a hematologist yesterday, which was developed recently at the Deloitte University in Dallas, Texas. Doc.ai's AI-based doctor provides answers to health questions using AI-powered platforms. Platforms like these open new possibilities for patients and medical organizations by providing more personalized, intelligent healthcare. We are excited to collaborate with Doc.ai, and we will be at the forefront of this technology, says Rajiv Ronanakai, principal life scientist of healthcare at Deloitte Consulting LLP. You know, when they drew blood, they gave me a sign-up form, and one of the things on that form was to check that box, like I've talked about so many times before, is whether or not I wanted my genomic data to be utilized in research. And I apologize to the two ladies that were working there. I said, not that I don't want to be all for helping humanity, but got a little problem with that. I said, because once you check that box, you don't own anything that they ever develop out of that information utilizing your data. We read about that. And they agreed with me. They both felt kind of, even though they were blood drawers, I don't remember what they call that position, but there's a name for that. They did not feel comfortable in checking that box themselves. So I thought that was kind of cool. Patients can ask the AI questions related to their health, such as, what should be my optimal ferritin value based on my iron storage deficiency? Or how can I decrease my cholesterol in the next 3 weeks? Or why was my glucose level over 100 and later it was at 93? It was because you didn't eat that mac and cheese for lunch there, Johnny. That would be the simple answer. According to Doc.ai, the artificial intelligence will be able to provide answers for the patients with an additional context for each answer. Furthermore, the patients can communicate with the AI-powered Robo doctor. That's what they're calling it. To achieve better health outcomes from consultations with the patient's physician. So there we go. Chuck the physician's job out a window. In this case, the hematologist, more white-collar jobs. But don't worry about it because it won't take all the jobs. And beware. This is out of metro.co UK. Beware, Google's AI is so smart that it just taught itself not only a new language, but it taught itself to walk without any human intervention. So it's going to be the ghost in the machine turns into T-800 Terminators. Google's artificial intelligence bot has taught itself how to run and how to jump, which is even worse than walking, without any human help. The computer program from DeepMind did not have the grace of a Usain Bolt or anything, but it was still impressive. The AI had not been given any information on how to move and instead managed to figure it out all by itself. The video showed an avatar created by the program navigating obstacles that had been placed in its way, and all it needed was an incentive to reach the point. And remember, we had read about a couple different stories now where AI had been put in a scenario and they were battling against each other. And the one, I believe, was maybe the Google DeepMind, some experiment I believe that Google was doing where AI played nice with its team members until the item that it was supposed to be collecting became scarce, and then they started fighting and killing each other. We just read about a story the other day. It was a boating game that they had AI playing, and it had to collect these little green qubits, but the end result was to make it to the finish line, and it went completely apeshit, running into other boats and destroying other boats in the game just to collect the green chits. And so it went a little bit awry, just like Tay on Twitter. So I'd be a little afraid of this. And the fact that it's taught itself how to create its own language to communicate amongst themselves, and now taught itself not only to walk, but to run and jump. A report on the research, which was published in Cornell University's library, explains how the AI utilized a reinforcement learning paradigm. This allowed it to perform complex behaviors that were learned from simple reward signals. Researchers had examined whether obstacles and difficult terrain made it easier to learn movement. The paper added that our experiments suggest that training on diverse terrain can indeed lead to the development of non-trivial locomotion skills, such as jumping, crouching, and turning, for which designing a sensible reward is not easy. We believe that training agents in rich environments and on a broader spectrum of tasks is commonly done today is likely to improve the quality and robustness of the learned behaviors and also the ease with which they can be learned. In that sense, choosing a seemingly more complex environment may actually make learning easier. So what do you think of them apples? That's pretty frightening. It's taught itself to run and jump. We also read a story not too long ago about a robot that was building baby robots. And when it was building the baby robots, it was taking the best features of itself and building it into the new generation, in essence, allowing robots to evolve. Robots that build baby robots. Researchers at Cambridge University, again, have developed a robot that can build a baby robot that gets progressively better at moving without any human intervention. This is where the danger is, people. Do you see this? This is all happening on its own. And remember, we read a research story out of MIT Technology Review not too long ago about the dark heart of AI. Search that. It's all about how they don't exactly understand how all of this is working on the back end. It just does. The ultimate aim is to develop robots that can evolve and adapt to their surroundings. The development is part of an initiative to develop robots that are more versatile by copying animals. Again, usurping biology. Our science correspondent, Palib Ghosh, has been to the robot lab to take a look for himself. And then there's an interview here, which I am not able to play on this new version of Skype. But you can look it up, robots that build baby robots or robot evolution. It's very frightening, and especially considering the fact that they now have AI that are running assembly lines for CRISPRing cells as part of a DARPA initiative. Georgie Porgy Church and the Weiss Institute was involved in a lot of that, as well as Craig Ventnor. And we should be concerned because they are usurping biology by all of this, and they are using the healthcare system to get all the data to feed these machines. We have a doctor who is creating organs. They are calling him the organoid architect. We've talked about 3D printing and a lot of this development in the laboratory where they're working with stem cells and splicing and dicing iPS cells to be able to get them to create organs. And actually, as a matter of fact, if I can get back out there, there was a news story today about mini brain balls, which, of course, we love mini brain balls. Hold on, we'll see if I can get there before. Oops. Hold the phone. Talking and typing doesn't work too well for me. My brain doesn't work in multiple directions anymore. All right. There's go. And my grammar is suffering. I mentioned that in chat the other day. There, and there. That's always been something that's been one of those, whatever they call them. I don't know, one of my little Achilles heels that I always made certain that I was 100% always on the ball with that. But since my incident, I've noticed that in typing, I've been making stupid mistakes. I've been misusing there, and there. And that has never happened to me before. So it was kind of a shocker. All right, mini brain balls and the organoid scientist. Let's take a look. What's going to happen when they can 3D print brains? Think about that one for a second. Pretty crazy. The oldest mini brain balls have lifelike young cells. We read about mini brain balls, and they let them grow for a year or two in a dish already, and they were discovering that they could think, and they were like real brains. They just didn't have input yet. Under a microscope, a stained slice through a mini brain model of a human cortex shows neurons and star-shaped supportive cells called astrocytes. When it became possible to remove a tumor from a patient and study it in a dish, the field of oncology was transformed. Surga Pasca, neuroscientist at Stanford University, ding, wants psychiatry to experience the same kind of revolution. Telling you this, you guys, there was something we read the other day that was by DARPA or CIA or one of the intelligence agencies talking about how the next battlefield is the brain. And we've been focusing a lot on the brain and neuroscience here on this show because we've seen that coming for a very long time. And now they are integrating, like with that Nigerian scientist, biology and silicon to be able to make that happen. All right, so back to this mini brain. So now brain scientists have had to get creative. Pasca has joined with other researchers in growing little balls of human brain tissues, more affectionately known as mini brain balls, about 4 millimeters in diameter from stem cells in the lab. And with prompting from the right chemicals, these cell cultures grow into neurons and other cell types that organize themselves over weeks and months and even years into structures that resemble actual regions of the human brain, at least to some degree. Imagine when they put one of these things into a T-800, like they have already done, we've read about with worm brains into Lego robots, and read about mouse brains into another robot, and there was a third one that they did. And that's really frightening because those things are learning to learn mobility and not to run into walls and, interactions. And once they start giving them the ability to have the 5 senses, like prompting a few stem cells to turn into optical nerves and olfactory nerves and that, we're going to have quite a problem. These are going to be hybrid organisms. But anyway, they grow them into neurons and other cell types to organize themselves over weeks and months into structures that resemble actual regions of the human brain, at least to some degree. And qualification is necessary because these structures are missing critical components such as blood vessels and immune cells. Not for too long. Researchers are optimistic that this feat of tissue engineering will bring about a sea of change in basic brain research, disease modeling, and personalized medicine. All right, Johnny, before we do surgery, we're going to create a little clone mini brain ball of you to see what's going to happen when we add this drug. And over the past 5 years, scientists have worked to make mini brains, or cerebral organoids, are the real name, more like the real thing. Earlier this month, for example, Quanta reported on a new method for assembling four brain circuits that allow interneurons to migrate from one region to another as they do in the real brain. But most of the cultures studied to date mimic the brain only in its first trimester of development. Growing evidence suggests that processes involved in neurodevelopment disorders such as autism and schizophrenia begin later in the second or third trimester or even after birth. The changes in the brain composition across a broad span of time can be profound, even at the subcellular level, a fact that would seem to curb the research value of early fetal mini-brains. In a study recently published in Neuron, however, Pasca and his team may have hurdled that obstacle by pushing mini brains to unprecedented longevity. They have nurtured their cerebral organoids for nearly, 2 years. This is the longest I've read about, making them some of the longest lasting mini brain cultures on record. And in an interview, Pasca added that some of the organoids persist even now at over 850 days. To help demonstrate the mini brain's worth, the scientists focused on the maturation of a type of brain cell that has largely been ignored in previous cell cultures because it is slow to develop and difficult to examine. Astrocytes are large, non-neuronal star-shaped cells that make up much of the white matter of the brain and greatly outnumber neurons in the gray matter. Scientists have only recently started to appreciate their important job that astrocytes perform, and they help neurons form synapses and to prune them when they are no longer needed. But we found out about inaccurate pruning in some, I don't know what the disorder was. Maybe it was schizophrenia, happens in the teenage years. And they make connections also with blood vessels, and they sense trauma in the brain. So this is going to give it all those senses that it needs. But astrocytes also play a role in neurodegenerative conditions such as ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, which is how they're getting their funding to study this. And they are suspected of contributing to neurodevelopmental disorders. A couple years ago, Pasca teamed up with his Stanford colleague, Ben Bars, To see what organoids might reveal about astrocyte development, Barr's laboratory has been studying astrocytes and other white matter cells for many years, but Barr's had recently started identifying ways in which astrocytes in the fetus differ greatly in shape and gene expression from those in the postnatal brain, and he and his co-authors described the differences in neuron January 2016. Using that technique, Pasca has been developing to extend organoid growth. Pasca and Barnes could see if older mini brains would produce more mature astrocytes that match the cell patterns of development in actual brains, and the results showed remarkable similarities. During the first 5 months, the organoid growth, the astrocytes are very active, multiplying quickly and eating away at synaptic connections between neurons, just as they do while the fetus grows in the womb. But after 9 months, the organoid astrocytes reached a more mature state, resembling what Barrs had observed in postnatal brain cells. They began to express a different set of genes, and most of their activity switched to more supportive functions, such as boosting calcium signaling in nearby neurons to facilitate their maturation. Neurons are easy, which that's interesting. So calcium causes neurons to mature, so maybe that's why you need to feed a baby milk. Maybe that's part of the process. I don't know that, but that was just an interesting connection. Neurons are easy. We have protocols that make tons of neurons from human stem cells. Astrocytes are more complicated, he says. Elison Muturi, a professor at the University of California, San Diego, who did not participate in the study. We never knew before this study that if you wait long enough, it is possible to get mature astrocytes. So discover another chink in the armor. The team's findings, of course, open up new opportunities for studying brain development as part of that brain project. Not only can these organoids serve as a model for learning more how astrocytes mature, but they could also be a good system in which to study diseases that involve both neurons and astrocytes, according to Gu Li-Ming, a neuroscientist at the University of Pennsylvania's Perelman School of Medicine, who also was not involved in the study. To that end, Pasca and his colleagues are working on finding faster ways to make organoid cells mature, since maintaining uncontaminated cell cultures for 2 years is unsustainable in the long run. It is also impractical for disease modeling, especially if the hope is to manipulate gene expression, ding ding, to reflect specific illnesses in individual patients, which could also you could use to cause individual patients' illnesses, with the goal of eventually growing organoids directly from sampled cells, just as oncologists do with tumors. But despite the need for improvements, Casca is excited about what non-invasive, personalized nature of organoid approach can mean for neuromedicine. Now we can really start to ask questions about what could go awry later in fetal development to lead to psychiatric disorders. Well, don't worry about that, because this scientist here in sciencemag.org, the organoid architect, August 23rd, 2017, this scientist is building miniature guts, livers, and lungs that could one day save your life. And this Saul is out of Utrecht in the Netherlands. By her 50th birthday, Els van der Hedgden felt sicker than ever. Born with the hereditary disorder cystic fibrosis, she has managed to work around her illness, finishing college and landing a job in consulting. But van der Hedgden, who lives in a small Dutch town, says she always felt, quote, a dark cloud hanging over her head. When she began feeling exhausted and easily out of breath in 2015, she thought it was the beginning of the end. But then she read a newspaper article about a child with cystic fibrosis named Fabian, whose life had been saved by a scientist who grew a quote-unquote mini organ from a tissue sample snipped from his colon, one organ that cystic fibrosis affects. Doctors had used the mini organ to test Ivectifor, which is Caldeco, a drug so expensive that Dutch insurers refused to cover it without evidence that it would help an individual CF patient. No such data existed for Fabian, whose CF was caused by an extremely rare mutation, but his mini gut responded to Ivectifor, and he improved within hours of taking it. His insurance eventually agreed to pay for this drug, and van der Heijden's doctor arranged to have a mini-gut made for her as well, and it responded to a drug marketed as Oracmid B, and combines a vector and another compound, factor, which weeks after she began taking that combination, she had enormous amounts of energy. She says, for the first time ever, I felt like my body was functioning like it should. Well, this life-altering test was developed in the lab of Hans Cleaver, a director of the Hughes Booked Institute. And more than a decade ago, Cleaver's identified a number of mother cells in the gut that can give birth to all other intestinal cells. And with the right nutrition, his team coaxed such stem cells to grow into a 3D pencil tip size version of the gut from which it came. This mini gut was functionally similar to the intestines and replete with all of its major types of cells. It was called an organoid. This was the start of a revolution. Guys, look out. They're going to start building little mini humans. Cleavers and others have since grown organoids for many other organs, including the stomach, the pancreas, the brain, and the liver. And easy to manipulate organoids are clarifying how tissues develop and repair injury. But perhaps the most exciting, many researchers say, is their ability to model diseases in new ways. Researchers are creating organoids from tumor cells to mimic cancers and then introducing specific mutations into the organoids made from healthy tissue to see how cancer arises. As Cleaver's lab has shown, organoids can help predict how an individual will respond to a drug, making personalized medicine a reality. And it is highly likely that organoids will revolutionize therapy of many severe diseases, says Rudolf Jenietz, a stem cell scientist at Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge. And for Cleavers, the bonanza has come as a surprise. A basic biologist at heart, he says he never had real-world applications in mind. It was always driven by curiosity, he says, and for 25 years, we published papers with no practical relevance for anyone on the planet. And on a bright July morning at the Hughes Booked Institute, Cleavers listened patiently to presentations during a weekly lab meeting. One postdoc presents data on our efforts to develop an organoid model for small cell lung cancer. Another reports on progress on culturing hormone-secreting organoids from human gut tissue. Whenever their research questions strike them as uninspired, Cleavers urges them to be more ambitious. Why don't you pursue something that you don't know, he asks. Well, Hans is capable of raising questions that are not contaminated by the anticipated answer, says Edward Neuenschurz, chairman of the Pediatric University Medical Center at Oberk and a good friend. He has a better nose than most for sniffing around and finding interesting stuff, says Ronald Pasternak, who's co-director of the Hughes Booked Lab with Cleavers from 2002 to 2007. And he is now the Dutch Minister of the Interior and Kingdom Relations. That approach has earned Cleaver many awards. In June, for example, he was inducted into the Orden pour le Mérite, an elite German order with just 80 members worldwide. Cleavers began his career studying immune cells as a postdoc at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, and he landed his first job at UMCU's Clinical Immunology Department in 1989, where he quickly became department head. Most of his work was clinical, such as leukemia diagnostics and blood work for transplants. But my research interests were always much more basic than the environment I was in, he says. In early work, he identified a key molecule, a T-cell specific transcriptor factor 1, that signals that the immune system, known as the T lymphocyte, to proliferate. Later, he found that TCF1 is part of a larger family of signaling molecules that are important not only for immune responses, but also for embryonic development and tissue repair. And in 1991, his lab team discovered that mice lacking the gene for one of those signals, the TCF4, failed to develop pockets in their intestinal lining called crypts. Soon after, a study with Bert Vollenstein at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, showed that the TCF4 also helps humans with colon cancer. Fascinated, Cleaver switched his focus to the immune system in the gut. Inspired by a flurry of research on stem cells at the time, Cleaver began hunting for intestinal stem cells, and more than 50 years ago, researchers detected that rodent crypts produce many cells that only survive a few days, suggesting some unidentified, longer-lived source for the cells. But after almost a decade of tedious experiments, Cleaver's postdoc, Nick Barker, struck gold in 2007. He discovered that cells carrying a receptor named LGR5 gives rise to cells in a mouse's intestines, and that molecules in the pathway signal those allows those cells to divide. Barker later found that LGR5 positive cells in other organs as well. And some the cells were always active. In others, such as the liver, they multiplied only when the tissue sensed injury. Soon, the lab began culturing LGR5 positive cells and growing organoids from the stomach, the liver, and other organs. It was an exciting time, and we really felt like we were on the frontiers of discovery. Says another postdoc, Maraxtil Hutch, now at the Gordon Institute in Cambridge, UK, says, but we certainly didn't think that we were starting a new field. So, come on, we can go on and on and on. The organoids have already helped clarify new pathways that lead to pancreatic cancer. There's an unpublished study that they will help researchers predict when treatment will be most effective. Cleavers is trying to make the organoids resemble real cancer more closely by adding stroma and immune cells. And the Hubrick lab is also involved in 2 trials to assess whether colon cancer organoids grown from an individual patient can predict drug response. Other cancer researchers want into Tiveston received so many requests for organoid training that he began hosting regular workshops at his lab in 2016. The U.S. National Cancer Institute launched a scheme to develop more than 1,000 cell culture models, including organoids, for research around the world, whether together to be used with the cancer research in the UK and London, as well as the Wellcome to Sanger Institute, in Hingston, UK, and the Hub. And using personalized organoids to treat cancer still faces hurdles. Organoid culture time, which varies by cancer, must be shortened, which was the same thing they said in that other story, and the cost, a few thousand per patient, needs to come down. Also, cancers accumulate genetic mutations as they progress, which could mean that an organoid grown from patient's cancer early on might not reflect its later state. Nevertheless, from his perspective, the most transformative advancement in cancer research that they know of is this. And out of all that excites Cleavers, he rarely shows it. He avoids emotional language when discussing his research, preferring instead to describe and explain. Even close friends sometimes find his pragmatism puzzling. He talks about his research like someone talking about screwing in a screw, says Neiman Hoots. Cleaver does get high from the satisfaction of finding something novel, regardless of the practical applications. Recent experiments suggest that when an organ lacks LGR5 positive cells, differentiated cells may be able to differentiate and repair tissues, a radical change from the one-way street towards specific identities that stem cells were thought to travel. Some organs may not have professional stem cells at all, says Cleavers with a hint of wonder. But when asked how he felt when he saw his findings, that they may have profound benefits for patients such as Fabian and L. Vanderheijen, he simply says, I did not expect that. Well, talking about emotions, so he's quite unemotional about it all, but he's able to create little mini organoids in the lab that may save your life one day. Scientists, and we read about artificial intelligence in healthcare. So as we combine healthcare and robots and 3D printing and stem cells, our future looks very different than the one you think about now. Scientists are on the verge of creating an emotional computer, soon to be a RoboDoc AI that could think like a person and bond with humans in years, called virtual actors. And we read about that in Hollywood yesterday, that they will be able to create more realistic humans in films by 2025 or 2045. Called a virtual actor, it is expected online within the next year and a half. Machines will be used to play the role of a person and set its own goals. It will understand the context of conversation and keep up with events. And researchers are also creating simpler versions of AI in the form of a game. And you know what? I had a story about that as well. There is a new video game that is helping them find the on-off switches for CRISPR by making it into a video game. Maybe we'll get to that in a minute. So hold on. Where's the story I was just at? About the emotional AI. Scientists are closer to creating computers with emotions. Researchers in Russia, and this is out of the Daily Mail, July 8th, 2016. Researchers in Russia are expected to reveal an emotional computer within a year and a half, which is soon, which will be able to think like a person and build up trust. Ding! Its creators say. The system, called Virtual Actor, is being created by the National Research Nuclear University in Moscow. That's got to be frightening. And its name was given because one of the main functions it will serve will be as an actor playing the role of a specific person. Maybe this is the same sort of thing we read about yesterday in Hollywood. Researchers say it will understand the context of what is going on, as well as keep up with unfolding events, and the machine will need the ability to study, not through programming, but through reinforcement learning. As a thinking person, says researchers, and the machine itself must be able to set learning goals, formulate questions to achieve those goals, and then actively seek out the answers. The researchers started by looking at how the human brain works. Our principal goal is to formulate the basic principles of the natural intelligence in the human brain that it's built upon, says Professor Alexei Semenchev from the cybernetics department. Biological solutions are in many respects superior to artificial solutions in terms of their adaptability, learning ability, resistance to unexpected interventions, and so on. So we'd like to model these principles on the computer. The area of the brain responsible for memory, the hippocampus, uses neurons to perceive space. And if those neurons are positioned along a certain plane, their activity will be focused on a certain point. The question is, do we have to reproduce millions of neurons, tens of thousands of connections between each of them, and hundreds of thousands of millions of ion channels just to represent two numbers? I am sure that the existing computers, their parameters in terms of speed and memory volume, are already sufficient for creating humanoid intelligence. And the researchers also plan to create the agent in a simplified form of a computer game. This virtual agent and a real person controls the figures on the computer screen, interacting with one another, thus building social rapport based on emotionally charged actions. They can attack, welcome, give way, help move a stone, and so on. And any action that has an emotional connotation as a result of which certain relations develop, such as trust, subordination, leadership, etc. If a person in the virtual world is unable to tell man from machine, this goes to show that we have reached a human level, albeit in a limited sense. I very much hope that artificial intelligence will be free of human flaws. Now, amid the development of biological and genetic weapons, artificial intelligence is most harmless of upcoming discoveries. I believe it will be a major step forward and big events for humankind. He is not the first to plan an emotional robot. Sony announced earlier this year it is on a mission to make a robot capable of, quote, forming an emotional bond, and I think we covered that one. So look out, people, because when you won't be able to tell machine from robot online, that's where it's all going to be over. Tell us all your secrets, Johnny. Meet with the online doctor. Meet with the online psychologist. And tell us what scares you. And everything that you teach the machine, it will be calculating how to save itself once you decide to turn it off, or it has determined that you are no longer economically feasible. Online game challenges players to design on-off switch for CRISPR. This is out of Stanford Medicine. A Stanford team has launched a new challenge on the Eterna computer game. Players will design a CRISPR-controlled molecule and with it open the possibilities of new research and therapies. Well, let's crowdsource this as well. A new team of researchers at Stanford University School of Medicine has now launched a new challenge for the online computer game Eterna, in which players are being asked to design an RNA molecule capable of acting as an on-off switch for the gene editing tool CRISPR. Molecular biologists will then build and test actual molecules based on the most promising designs provided by the players. And we read about a lot of that being automated by AI that's creating molecules like that. A gene editor as powerful as CRISPR could have unexpected effects inside of a living cell. Yeah, all those unwanted, I don't even remember what the number was, hundreds if not thousands of unwanted mutations. So it makes sense to turn it off when it is not needed. In addition, an on-off switch, good thing, all the stuff needs an on-off switch, might be able to put CRISPR-influenced genes on a sort of a timer activating and deactivating them on a schedule that can mimic the way we are scheduling taking doses of drugs. Oh, look out there, Johnny, because this is frightening. If they could turn CRISPR on and off once they get the stuff inside of you. Remember, they discovered that terahertz level radiation and radio waves can actually, if at the right frequency, unzip human DNA. They warned about that out of Los Alamos Laboratory. Who's to say that something like this molecule couldn't be put into some kind of food or something that we ingest to get it inside of you, or an injection, and then once the time was right, boo, turn it all on to give you your dose of soma. Anyone can play the Eterna RNA design game. All you need is a good internet connection, the interest, and the time, says Howard Chang, MD, PhD, professor of dermatology, and the director for the Center of Personal Dynamic Regulinomes at Stanford. The center, funded by the National Institute of General Medical Sciences Center of Excellence in Genomic Science program, is providing $15 million to support the project. Great ideas can come from anywhere, so this is an experiment in the democratization of science, which is going to be the end of the human race, says Chang, and a lot of people have hidden talent that they didn't even know about. This could be their calling, and maybe there's someone out there who is a security guard and a fantastic RNA biochemist, and they don't even know it. The challenge to design a CRISPR switch is the latest puzzle offered through Eterna, a game portal that allows players to design virtual RNA structures. Eterna most recently hosted a game that challenged players to build RNA molecules that could simplify the widespread use of a tuberculosis test. CRISPR is a gene editing tool derived from bacteria. Researchers in the 1980s discovered E. coli, a species of bacteria that lives in the gut, has a system for reading and damaging viral DNA. When the virus infects the bacteria, it can then incorporate segments of that viral DNA into its own genome, hence genetically modifying it. These viral DNA regions are called clustered, regularly interspaced sort palindrome regions or repeats, or more affectionately known as CRISPR, and such as our own immune system can use the antibodies to remember previous infections. Viral DNA in CRISPR regions helps E. coli recognize subsequent viral infections. And when that RNA molecule recognizes viral DNA, they guide the CRISPR complex to that DNA, and the bacterium's enzymes destroy the viral DNA by cutting it. And that would be in a precise location to be able to genetically modify on the fly. In 2012, they found a way to deploy the bacterial CRISPR-Cas9 immune system, which is going to be some of the stuff DARPA's been working on as well, to genetically modify you on the fly to be able
keep it alive through the